Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming back for the third day of this. It's really been a stellar event. And thanks again to GTRI as our host. They've said this before, but they've truly set the bar for what absolutely delightful IDESG Plenary can be. Also to Authentify and LexisNexis, our sponsors, who have made this a really nice event. So as Bob said this morning, we're going to be spending the next 3 hours doing pilot outbriefs. Just a little bit of background for those who haven't been through one of these before, or who may be new to the organization. So, the creation of the Identity Ecosystem Steering Group was a key implementation step for the NSTIC. Another key step where we've really put a tremendous amount of time, and really the bulk of our financial resources, has been the funding of innovative pilots that can actually take some of the ideas captured in the strategy and link those to execution. Testing out different approaches to advanced identity, trying to tackle different barriers that the marketplace hasn't solved. And the concept has been that while the steering group doesn't have any formal role in managing the pilots, since they're government grants, only the government can do so, it's going to be very important for each of our pilots to be very closely involved within the Identity Ecosystem Steering Group and be taking some of the lessons learned, both good and bad, and feeding those into the committees. The idea being that, a great way to help settle theoretical discussions is to sometimes go out and test it in the wild and then bring the results back and see what works and what doesn't, and build off of those and iterate on those to make progress towards an identity ecosystem framework. So you all have heard twice from the first round of pilots that we awarded in the fall of 2012. Today we're real excited to present to you the next 5 pilots that were awarded in September of 2013. Now, mind you, they all didn't really kick off till Halloween or so, since the awards came out right before the government shut down, and then of course we were shut down for a bit. So they're in a stage where they're all just getting started, but it's a new group that we're really quite excited about. And I think you'll find, much as with the first tranche of pilots that were funded in 2012, they are all tackling both, everything that they're doing is different from one another, and yet they're all dealing with a set of issues that's very much the same. If there's one set of lessons learned that we've seen out of the pilot so far, is that they've all reinforced the need for an identity ecosystem framework, and thus, in doing so, really reinforced the need for this organization and the work all of you are doing. No matter what they're doing, no matter how different the technologies, how different the approaches, how different some of the relying parties involved, time and time again, the lack of standards for interoperability, the lack of policies and standard legal agreements that companies, particularly relying parties, can fall back on, keeps bubbling up to the surface as an issue. I think one thing you'll hear today, certainly from a couple of the pilots who are, focused in part, at least specifically, on helping to develop some things that can be artifacts that can then be shared, reused perhaps across the community. The work that they're doing to help advance the identity ecosystem framework here is really quite significant. The way we're going to do things is each of our 5 pilots will have 20 minutes to present. To keep things going in the flow, what we're going to do is hold all questions off to the end. We've done this format a couple times before, and it's worked pretty well. So they'll each have 20 minutes. I think around 10:30 we're going to look to take, which will probably be after the 4th presentation, look to take a 5-10 minute break, get some coffee, take care of other things one needs to do sometimes in morning break, and then come back for the last presentation, and then we'll have some good time for Q&A until noon. So our presenters this morning, we've got Alex Naiman from Exponent, John Wandel from our host at GTRI, Denise Taylor from, Glenn Schoonover from ID.me, Denise Taylor from Privo, and Steve Reyes from TSCP. So let's start things off this morning with Alex from Exponent. Thanks.